This segment of Delmarva Life is brought to you by Peninsula Regional Medical Center.
Imagine being at the grocery store, maybe a crowded mall, maybe even in your own home, and somebody near you has a heart attack. Would you know what to do? Well, if you don't, you're not alone.
Yeah, sadly, the American Heart Association reports 70% of Americans feel helpless to act during a cardiac emergency because they either do not know how to administer CPR or their training has significantly lapsed.
But now, thanks to a new smartphone app, somebody close by may be able to help. As a firefighter paramedic, Lucas Hirst uses the latest technology to treat heart attacks, but it's with this technology that he may be saving lives around the world.
This is the same as shouting in a room, "Is there a doctor in the house?" All this does is it leverages technology.
In 2010, as a volunteer tech geek, Lucas helped a fire district develop a smartphone app that eventually became known as Pulse Point. When someone calls 911 about a cardiac arrest, an alert goes out to app holders who know CPR and are within walking distance of the emergency.
We had always planned that, someday we knew we were going to save someone's life. We weren't sure when exactly it was going to be happening.
It happened last month. An off-duty firefighter was working out at a health club and got a Pulse Point alert of a heart attack in a nearby parking garage. Then he got to meet the man whose life he saved with CPR.
If you had this app, or even had the ability just to help your neighbor, if you just don't even think about it, just do the right thing, it's going to make such a big difference in everybody's life.
That's why the district gave away the app they developed to Pulse Point, and they hope one day it'll be standard on all new smartphones.
It would be so neat because the lives that could be saved if everybody had this on their phone, sky's the limit.
Lucas says now that CPR is limited to chest compressions only, anyone can learn it in seconds. The Pulse Point app shows you how and even sounds off the rhythm to follow.
This is great. We are saving more and more lives. This is one of the lives we've saved, and I know there are going to be more.
Now, Pulse Point also has an app that informs users of the location of automated external defibrillators, or AEDs.
How about that? Well, the reason the app works to save lives is because it cuts back on the wait time for a heart attack victim to receive care. Time is such an important factor in serious health situations. Well, our next guest understands how mere seconds can save a life. Mark Cotter is a physician assistant in the emergency department of PRMC. Mark, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
My pleasure.
So, first of all, what do you make of this technology? Do you think an app could actually help save a life?
Oh, absolutely. This is very exciting. They look at the treatment of sudden cardiac arrest as a chain of survival, is what the Heart Association calls. And the initial chain is to recognize it, summon 911, and then one of the other links in the chain is bystander CPR,
right,
followed by early defibrillation. And this application will enhance both of those, just by notifying people nearby that there's a need for assistance, as well as notifying them where the nearest AED is. So this is very exciting.
Now, as a physician's assistant, you've seen this firsthand.
Oh, absolutely. And in my setting, working in the emergency department and working with the fire department, we actually do CPR fairly often.
Mm-hmm.
And not that it becomes routine, but we're used to doing those types of procedures. But the Heart Association estimates there's about 57 million adults that know CPR. And typically they don't practice it very much, and I guess fortunately they don't get to do it very much, but if they were told or informed that there was a need for CPR near them, and that's what this application does, it would allow them to respond quickly.
Just how important is CPR? I mean, what are your chances of survival if someone's administering CPR during a cardiac arrest?
Well, unfortunately, with a sudden cardiac arrest, there's a lot of different causes. One of the most common causes is where the heart fibrillates or beats so fast that it can't pump effectively. And in those cases, CPR, the chest compressions, can maintain the blood flow to the brain and getting the oxygen to the brain, and then the defibrillation can allow the heart rhythm to resume its normal beat. So the overall effectiveness of CPR when someone has a sudden cardiac arrest is unfortunately very low, only about 15%. But in certain settings, when CPR can be done very rapidly, when defibrillation can be done within the first few minutes, then the survival rate goes up much higher. And some cities that have integrated a system such as this might have survival rates in the 40 to 60% range.
Okay, so let's talk heart attacks for just a second. What kind of symptoms are we looking for?
Well, with a heart attack, there can be a variety of different symptoms. Chest pain, of course, is one of them. And with chest pain, there's a variety of different types of pain. Some people will deny they have pain, say, no, I only have tightness, I only have pressure, I only have squeezing. But chest pain is a key one. There can be other things such as, in some people, some confusion, or as they call changes in mental status, where because there's a decrease in the blood flow to the brain,
cold sweat is an issue?
Cold sweat, absolutely. Sometimes. The pain can radiate up to the neck into either arm. Classically, it's the left arm, but it can be into either arm. They can have nausea with it, upset stomach.
Right.
And sometimes there are no symptoms at all, or they're not the classic symptoms.
Sure. More often in women, but in anyone, they can be a variety of different symptoms. And of course, nausea all by itself doesn't mean you're having a heart attack. We often get nauseated with upset stomachs and things like that. But when you put it all together, nausea and shortness of breath and chest tightness that occur with exertion or in stressful situations can be evidence that you might be at least have a tendency towards a heart attack, what they call angina, or actually be having a heart attack if the symptoms persist.
Okay, so let's say I feel like I'm having a heart attack, I've called 911, ambulance is on the way. Until they can get here and do something, is there something I can do?
Well, resting quietly is the main thing. You don't want to exert yourself. It's not the time to get up and change your clothes and things like that. But taking an aspirin, just a single adult aspirin, has been proven to be effective. And in fact, when people come to the emergency department, that's one of the first things that we do is we give them an adult aspirin, assuming you're not allergic to that.
Right.
Now, you touched on a little bit the difference between CPR and defibrillation. What is it? Can you break it down for us a little bit?
Well, one of the exciting things about pre-hospital care of sudden cardiac arrest is that they've actually simplified CPR. And while in the medical setting we make a point of assisting the breathing, the civilians who are doing CPR at the seat really just have to do compressions of the chest. And you can almost teach somebody that over the phone. So it's a lot simpler than it had been, where really you just have to press on the chest rapidly, at least 2 inches per compression. And in fact, this application has a metronome built in for it. But what the chest compressions do is they move the blood throughout the body, through the lungs to pick up the oxygen, and then that's carried to the brains. And it buys you time for defibrillation to occur. Now with defibrillation, when you get an AED, or as the ambulances carry, a manual defibrillator. But the purpose of the defibrillator is to provide a electric shock to the heart. And what that does is, instead of jump starting the heart, as most people think, it actually causes the heart to beat in unison. It's almost like a room crowded with people who are all talking at the same time, and somebody shouts, "Shut up." And that's what the shock does. All of the muscles in the heart contract at the same time and then relax at the same time. And the hope is that, and often, the heart will then begin to beat in unison.
The way it should.
The way it should.
Mark Cotter, ERPA at PRMC, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Wow.
For coming in with great information.
And to read more from PRMC about heart attacks and cardiovascular health, go to WVOC.com and click on our picture at the top of the page.
I was trying to find the metronome. Oh, there it is.
There it
Look at
is.
that. How about that? Well, sometimes saving a life is as easy as agreeing to be an organ donor. Still ahead on Delmarva Life, the story of a woman who was supposed to die 20 years ago. But instead, she spent the next 2 decades raising a family and helping others. How the persistence of her doctor and the kindness of strangers allowed her to live happily ever after.
Well, actress S. Apatha Merkerson has her own health battle to face, and she's winning. She joins us next to tell us about living with diabetes, and we can't let her go without talking a little law and order.
Then we realized we loved each other more than before.
And a little bit later on, Apex Revolution takes the Delmarva Life stage. Delmarva Life, we'll be right back.